Welcome to the Yang Gang Roundtable. It is Saturday, May 2nd. I am here with Ariel, Jacqueline, Jeremy, and Sheridan, all UBI advocates, and we are going to have an open discussion on UBI, poverty, and electoral politics. So, without further delay, speakers, you have the floor.
All right, cool.
Well, anticlimactic. It's all right. Yeah, no pressure.
All right, so here's an interesting thing. I just got an email from I applied to one of these like apply for job kind of website, not apply for jobs, like job opening kind of services that they send you into your email. And guess who's hiring? The unemployment department.
Yeah, that is definitely going to be an in-demand job for more administrators to administrate the cash. I really hope that people will look at the system and realize its ridiculousness.
You know how much some of these bureaucrats make? Like 3,200 something a month to 5,000 something. It's even more if you're.
That's pretty good. That's $36,000 to $60,000 a year.
Yeah, and they and some of these like IT people and like higher up case managers can make up to like 5,000 to 10,000 like a month or like stuff like that.
That's easily six figures.
Right. Like just goes to show how dumb our like our system is, that we could, if we did that, well,
one IT person would be 10 regular people getting the freedom dividend.
Right. And so why do you think government is so against something like that? Because they're leeching us off of their own incompetency. Instead of having this freedom dividend, our freedom dividend is going to pad their pockets, and they're not even doing such a great job. You know? I mean, I'm thinking like if my unemployment does run out, I'd most likely, what's the word I'm looking for? I'd just kind of I would choose that, because I'm right on that cusp where they have to institute the PEUC, but they say that process is like still in the works. But I mean, like seriously, but the last thing I want to be is one of these bureaucrats. But I don't know.
What are the qualifications that they say you have to get one of those jobs? I'm just curious.
Just good communication skills, and like, you have to pass these online tests or something like that, that they administer. So there's that part. But it said that like you cannot work from home, and you have to like first start out at their offices. So I'm like, I don't want to go into some sketchy part of town where they have their offices in. So I don't know. I have to check that out. I looked at some of their reviews online, and like there are people saying like they're just like a whole bunch of angry people on there. You get happy people here and there, but most of them are like pissed off at the way that the process works. Yeah. But here's the hilarious part. So if you get laid off from that kind of job, you'll still get your income from the same source. You know what?
What?
No. I'm saying if you get a job at the EDD, the Employment Development Department, that's what they call themselves in California. So when you get laid off, like that's where your unemployment comes from. But if like after the pandemic you get laid off from the unemployment offices, but then you still file the same office from the same office. I'm just saying that's the funny part,
You're just commenting on the irony of being a customer, as they say, at the unemployment office where you used to work.
Right.
Yeah, it'd be a funny. I mean, not really. I mean, funny scenario in a dark comedy sort of way. Yeah, sure. I see. Faye D has joined us. Welcome, Faye.
Yeah, welcome, Faye.
Hi, I wasn't sure if this is the call I'm supposed to be on or not.
Well, we had some last minute scheduling changes, so we just are having a very informal, casual, open discussion. So anyone's welcome today, noon to 2. We're gonna do this, and we're gonna have the normal roundtable probably tomorrow at the normal Sunday group, which is 4 to 6.
Yeah. But I mean, it's funny to like if I ran out of unemployment and then applied to them and got the job, and then after the pandemic they said, okay, we don't need you anymore. So it's like, okay, I'll need to file for unemployment from the same people who I once was. It's like you're a customer, you're an employee, and then you're a customer again. Of the same people. This is the kind of backwards, mentally ill economics that we have right now that like a freedom dividend would like quickly remedy, just on the spot.
It would. It really, really would.
So I joined in late. What were you talking about with like going to customer, employee, customer?
Okay.
The unemployment offices of California are in desperate need of unemployment administrators and are paying them $36,000 to $120,000 a year. And we were joking about how many freedom dividends that could pay for, and the job opportunities of going from unemployment and then working as an unemployment administrator, then getting fired after the pandemic.
Laid off. And then getting laid off after the pandemic and getting your money from the same source when you file.
And if you drag all the cash flows, it's all from the government. It's just ridiculous. We don't invest in people to drive the market.
Right.
I had a friend who ran for city council in San Diego, and I had a call with him yesterday, and he was saying how like he was still working building a website, but like one person on the team like called in sick and they fired everybody, and yeah, because they were afraid of corona, and now he's laid off, and I'm like, wow, that sucks, man. That's kind of what's going on, is this paranoia of being sick.
Yeah, that is pretty hard. I myself was working for a college, and they just gave me my 2 weeks notice, and in theory, I'm going to get one more paycheck. But I got laid off after the college closed all the in-person operations for the past 2 months almost.
It's ironic how much the administrators get paid for enrolling people, but I feel like if everyone's going to start going to digital college, they probably won't have to pay as many administrators, so the cost might go down in a very strange way.
Yeah. Did you hear that? Some students
costs never go down. The cost of college will never, ever go down. They will just, the owners of the colleges will simply eat the profits. Whoever stands to profit will profit.
There's a joke about, I believe, Yale. Yale University is a hedge fund with a college attached because of how much revenue their hedge fund produces.
Yeah, these colleges like to rail against like how bad corporations are and like we're so noble, like trying to teach the youth, but no, they're bad. If not, they're
just
worse.
A business.
They're a business. And okay, here's so egregious. They took out those PPP loans, some of them, just like the LA Lakers did, when they don't need it, and they're refusing to refund some of the money to their students, and now some of these students are suing them.
Oh, that's amazing.
Right? So I don't think like when we say like, oh, these institutions of higher education, we should all worship them. No. They're almost just as rotten and corrupt as like a Wall Street CEO.
Yeah, I genuinely see only one way the cost of college is ever going to go genuinely down functionally in the entire system, and that's when the government fully subsidizes all education for Americans.
And you know why do you think the people want to recruit you so bad? Because that's their incentive. Even if you're not ready, even if you don't want it, even if you think that it's not for you, that they only see you as a dollar sign. Because when they're training, you know, to recruit, like they have to hit like quotas. You know, that's it. You're not important. What you want, your future, like what you have going on in your head, like what you're dealing with. It's just like, here, just sign. So I can hit. It's like you're no more to some of these people than just like points on like a scoreboard. That's all you matter for.
That is in so many ways like more than just education, though. We're
Right.
dollar signs to everybody who has desire for money.
Right, exactly.
The sad thing is, no one actually has any dollars.
Idiot. It's just like economic cannibalization, financial cannibalization.
That's exactly what it is. I call it economic Darwinism. If you aren't smart enough, lucky enough, conniving enough, or exploitive enough to find cash out of our system or your neighbors, you won't be able to feed yourself.
Or just tell people to get into loads and loads of debt and just leverage other people's debt to tell them to pay you for some MLM opportunity or your online course.
Exactly.
It's disgusting. Companies are no better. The companies just want you to buy their credit card and put everything on financing. And that's what they tell all their employees to do. Did you tell them about financing? Did you tell them about this? Did you tell them about that? Did you tell them about the options they have? They can take out a loan for this TV. They can take out a loan for this. Sick.
Well, like we can complain about these predatory businesses, but my real question is, how do we solve it? Like,
Right.
how? I mean, like, are these predatory businesses closing because of Corona, or are they like on full effect right now? And how do we shut that down? You know,
The fly-by-night operations are in very full swing right now.
what is that?
Fly-by-night operations, just people who build something to extract cash out of a panic.
And they shut down.
Yeah, and then they shut down immediately after the panic because there's more costs to keeping it up.
All right. It's like I think like all the UBI candidates should address what we are talking about. David Kim has a really, really good chance. I wonder, Hannah.
We are going to be interviewing David Kim pretty soon. I think.
Nice.
Nice.
Next week, Jeremy. Next Saturday, is it now?
Yeah, I gotta still work out a few things with them, but yeah, it is next week.
Great. So tentatively next week.
Right.
I'm
correct.
excited you guys are getting him on. I know Hannah was working really hard to promote him, and it's cool that we got more people coming.
Right. And he has a real shot because it's going to be one-on-one with him and Jimmy Gomez.
We'll make sure you're there for that, Ariel.
Yeah. Good. Yeah, because I got a chance to talk to him in downtown LA. You know, my dad works in the same district that he's representing, and I'm just adjacent to it. So I got a dog in this fight. I mean, we all do, but it's like I'm like, you know, geographically and personally connected. So yeah. but he has such a big heart, you know. He just cares, and he just, like, you know, it has nothing to do with like partisan anything. Like I told him that I supported Trump before, and he was all like, well, I can see why you did. And I'm like, exactly. And now I really don't give a damn about him, and I just want things to work. And he's like, so do I. And I'm like, okay, I can get along with that. You know, like people aren't so different. Like, you know, you like, we just like to amplify all these like petty, idiotic differences. But at the end of the day, it's like, can we at least have something that's functioning and that's not like, you know, so fucked up that we just have to have our jaws dropping and in awe of like just the idiocy that we see every day when it comes to, I don't know, our politics. like is that too much to ask? You know,
Of course it is. No, I'm just kidding.
Right? Maybe that should just be like the motto of the UBI candidates: a functioning, fair society. Is that too much to ask? Question mark. It's like
No. You
Not
got
too
to
bad.
change the phrasing. Change the phrasing to "Can you imagine?"
right.
And then that puts the image in people's heads, and they can live in it. And if you
Right.
phrase it, "Can you imagine?" then you're not doing the work anymore. They're trying to figure it out.
Imagine all the people getting some relief.
That's it. We're gonna get sued. You guys stop. 7 notes, man. That's the extent of the law.
Right.
We're
No
gonna
more
Twitch
fetish
copyright
bubbles.
strike.
Yeah.
Right? We lose the whole podcast for that one little song. I'm just kidding.
well, I said getting some relief, not the other thing he said. So
I'm sure no one's going to report us. But hey, more predatory money. Can we
Right.
actually talk about copyright a little bit? What are your guys' thoughts on copyright?
I really wish that copyright, would be updated so that really it expires after 25 years or so. It's ridiculous that now copyright simply never expires, so Disney can keep Mickey Mouse forever.
the zombie Mickey Mouse. Like,
I mean, that's the state of copyright law. If you don't know, copyrights just whenever copyrights would expire, that would encompass stakeholders like Disney, people that own a big copyright. They just extend the law so it won't happen. Disney will never let their properties lapse into the public domain, and it is a problem. We never talk about it because it's like not a material need problem. No one's going to die because they can't profit off their Mickey Mouse fan fiction, but it is not just, and I'm glad you brought it up. Those are my thoughts.
I personally think we should follow along the Eastern traditions on ideas. Patenting and copyrighting ideas and expecting them to be solely yours to be profited off of is inherently monopolistic, and I'm shocked that while we have antitrust laws on the books, copyright laws are getting extended into infinity.
But my problem with it is you can't evolve an idea if it's somebody else's and they need the claim, they need the money, imagine if Disney combined and they had no copyrights. Imagine all the people who would feel safe to do something. I remember I wasn't very creative for a while because I was paranoid that somebody's going to take money or they're going to take this away from me. I was almost scared that I couldn't be creative in a thing that inspired me. So there was no evolution.
That paranoia doesn't just affect artists. John Oliver actually covered a business in India or Thailand that blocked one of his jokes about Disney, even though John Oliver himself is cast as Zazu in their live-action remake of The Lion King. So it's hysterical that the copyrights are so widespread. It doesn't affect just American artists and artists around the globe. It's also businesses that aren't even involved in creative works. They just distribute.
Man, just these live action remakes, just such a no creativity. Just okay, this thing let's just bring this thing back from the dead and reanimate it.
I would love to talk about this a little bit, actually. Can I?
Go for it.
Sure.
Okay.
Yeah, of course, Faye, please.
Okay. So what I love about live action is not that it's copy paste, change the filter, but it's more it helps us in a sense humanize animals because they look like animals, and when we have names of things, if we name something, we are less likely to be mean to it, even if it's a robot, right? But if you have something that visually looks like something you like care about, you might actually, become an advocate for these things because it's now becoming more realistic to a sense that like we need to be more friendly to our environment. That's just the thoughts on that. And it translates differently for people. Like some people and their brains aren't as creative and as imaginative, and they really do appreciate the literal translation. But it's all about taste. Usually, it just annoys people because we like what's familiar. We like what's what resonates with nostalgia. That's our favorite thing. To deviate annoys some, not all.
I think like nostalgia's not bad, but it becomes like a crutch, and people don't think of anything new anymore. Yeah.
And I think this is just going to keep continuing. As our video and editing and animation technology gets better and better, we're just going to see more revisions with the new technology.
But I like it when they maybe like you have the nostalgia, but then you like bring something new into it. You kind of like mix it with something different, so that way at least something is evolving and it's not just staying in the past. I mean, I look at back on my past and I say, what the best thing about it is, it's like I'm not living it anymore. I have a thing where it kind of feels good. It's like I drive by like my school and I'm like, oh well, thank God that shit's over. Yeah.
So with nostalgia, though, you can actually purposely surround yourself with nostalgia to summon happier feelings if it was something happy nostalgia, and like, if you have a favorite snack from a kid, when you're a kid and then you have it again, it might bring you joy, but like, I don't know. Nostalgia is a fascinating thing, but even music, people who are losing their memory, who listen to nostalgic music, recall the memories that were encoded during that time. So it actually helps with memory.
Yeah. Well, yeah, there are good things about it, but like I used to be that way too. Like I remember when I took vacations to Canada and Mexico with my parents, I used to feel like nostalgic for being in the hotel room and like going to the pool and like do that. Like I wish I was there again. But then when I went to Australia, I was like, you know what? Like, and I did it by myself. This is even better than those memories. I was like, this is even better than that nostalgia. It's like I like this more. I don't know, and it was like I could create better memories, or I could create something new in the moment that was so awesome that I didn't need to hold on to that past thought just to feel good.
There's definitely a difference between limiting yourself to trying new things versus like living in the past. Like, everything in moderation, right?
For sure.
So what are some other topics you guys are interested in talking about today?
Well, we have the roundtable topics. Why don't we talk about them? They're linked in the documents chat. If you'll go to documents chat, or actually they're also pinned at the top of this chat. We have...
The first one is about Nancy Pelosi's timid statement about a guaranteed minimum income.
Yes, I actually, just before the show, made that a little bit less cheeky in its verbiage. So, I'm taking my own advice. Not really. I don't know if it's my advice. But I'm just trying to be a little bit more neutral, I guess, in its framework, because I was just ridiculous in its original wording. It was like, yeah, I think I had timidly in there. But yeah, it's that's still the first question.
It's very true. It's very accurate. But yeah.
Yeah. Have any details regarding what she's trying to make happen been released yet? I mean, I know she had that one little interview where she like talked about it for like 30 seconds. Is that still where we are with that?
Well, we have the UBI Center list of like 2 or 3 dozen different proposals which get cash to citizens, whether it's monthly or one time. But I don't believe Pelosi herself has created or sponsored any of those.
So the question about Pelosi was what kind of can you reiterate the question?
Yeah, sure. Sorry, I have my mic muted. Speaker Pelosi has begrudgingly admitted it may be time to consider a guaranteed minimum income. What kind of exclusionary means testing, if any, is Pelosi likely to attach to such a minimum income based on her ideology and record? I think Jeremy formulated this question himself. I reworded it. So if you want any clarification, Jeremy could probably help with that. But are you clear on the question?
Yeah. I don't know Pelosi very well, if I'm going to be honest, but I mean the
No, that's
means
good. Be honest.
testing.
Yes, absolutely. Don't pretend to be an expert. Just be honest. Thank you. I appreciate it.
As far as means testing goes, like, I mean, I think I've said it in a different podcast, but I think it's going to sort itself out because people are going to notice disparities, and I think some of that sideways money is going to happen. But I think as time goes on, we just need something out there to start with, like a rough draft, and then I think it'll evolve to be more inclusive. But you know, we're in such a hustle right now that to worry about the specifics is wasting time, in my opinion.
Well, I believe that Pelosi, being a pretty generic neoliberal establishment type, she is going to go along the same lines as Trump's one-time stimulus check, pretty much through the IRS as a earned income tax refund that if you earn more than whatever threshold they arbitrarily choose, you'll pay back in taxes. The only change that may happen is it's a monthly transaction of like $200 to maybe $1,000. That's what I would estimate.
Yeah,
Anyone else have input into that?
Right. I think it's also important to, I guess, realize the entirety of what she said. So on the topic of income, she ended her statement by saying, quote, "But again, recognize the realities of it all. What is the execution of it? What is working? And what are we getting our money's worth on?" She went on to say, "I think we have to look at that too." So it was not like a huge endorsement by any means. It's just something I guess is floating around in her head.
Yeah, one would hope she is referring to UBI and will admit that that's what she meant later and not retrofit it to whatever her neoliberal ideology, makes sense of it in the future. Does anybody else have anything to say on that topic? We could look at the others. I mean, you all have access to all of them, so.
Let's go to the next one. Oh,
there's also the linked in the documents chat should be the public the public topic suggestion document, which you can also draw on for topics. And if it's not there, I will make sure it's there in just a moment. I'm gonna go get it now.
So
might not be there actually.
Well, I think like some of those other congressmen should, who are supporting the 2,000 cash payments, should call her out to see like what does she mean? Does she mean like what they have in mind, or does she think it's something else?
That'd be hysterical if every single senator and congressperson who had made a basic income bill all of a sudden said, "Oh yeah, Nancy Pelosi was talking about this one."
So the next question I saw, I feel like everyone's kind of tapped out on that one. It was about the meat shortage, right? The impending meat shortage.
That is correct. Yes.
Okay, so I think I want like why is that said? Because like I mean, I personally have seen tons of cow farms. Are they not being taken care of because of the pandemic? Like,
so this isn't just a singularly meat shortage. This is a major supply chain disruption. Most of our futures markets are pretty much thrown into chaos because of this pandemic, because restaurants have closed, major consumers of meat and food in general are closed, and there's just consumers buying from grocery stores. That's essentially it. So, for example, there was an article about Idaho and their potato farmers literally dumping tons of potatoes simply because they don't have anywhere else to sell them. And they can't just give them away or else they don't get the tax write-off.
There's also what I've been following on this. In the Midwest, a lot of hog farmers, like lean hogs, they literally have nowhere to take their hogs, because of slaughterhouses that were closed from COVID outbreaks. So they can't get their hogs to the slaughterhouses to be slaughtered and prepared into food to get to the market. So that's where a lot of the problem is too. So now they're going to be euthanizing over 200,000 hogs, I think, in Minnesota alone.
That I did not know. That is absolutely.
That is a ton of wasted bacon.
Awful. That's like just.
Why do they have to kill
them?
That
is so.
Well, there's nowhere to sell them, and once they move past their harvest stage, it's not that optimal.
Can we just have Adopt a Pig Day or something? Like, we don't need to kill these. Like, so many people want to be farmers. I mean, realistically, these are living creatures. They could have a real existence
the
outside.
The problem, again, is the major distribution obstacles. If everyone had a basic income, the aspiring farmers could easily connect with these farms and say, hey, don't kill it. Right. I'll buy that. But we have such a cash-starved society that we can't even be innovative in this crisis.
Right. Did you see what are those schmucks? Glenn Beck. What?
Jeremy just posted in the chat universal basic piglets.
What is his name? Glenn Beck and Tim Pool were like saying, "Oh no, UBI, but these people don't understand that you can't just, if there's no milk in the store, that you can't just say, oh, here's money, and then the milk will magically appear." It's like dumbasses. They're throwing all this stuff out.
Because when you have money, you have options. You have alternatives you can reach for. And if you have money, you can be creative in how you trade. And that is what's really lost on these supply-side focused socialists, is there's a demand being unmet. We are throwing away food, and needy kitchens are desperately going under because they can't afford food.
It's interesting. Like so, Glenn Beck and Tim Pool are the socialists.
Sheridan, how dare you make sense?
I know the neoliberalism is incredibly gripped on our legislature.
Yeah, and it's like Ariel likes to say, lazy brains. Mm-hmm. I think that's being very mild and polite. There's an old saying that zombies like to eat brains. You watch zombie movies, there's zombie brains. Well, I'll tell you what, zombies would find themselves pretty fucking starved in this society at this point with all the dumbass shit that I just...
like the zombies would go to one of those like anti-lockdown protests and starve to death.
Yeah, exactly. Bingo.
So my grandpa, who's like 80 now, I swear, he does this thing where he volunteers his time at it's like part the thrift store, but it's also part like they collect food from local like Safeway is what it's called, and Fred Meyer's and all these places that have excess food, and they create food boxes, and they're giving away food boxes, and like because the thrift store part was closed, people thought they were no longer open, and he's just in a small town, right? But he's personally gotten like several other retired people to collect all this food to give away to needy families. So, I mean, I'm sure if the issue is money, we have volunteers that might be willing to do it. And if the people are already throwing it away, they've already accepted that they have financial loss, but like we can barter and trade too. Maybe these people need something that isn't a pig or whatever, but maybe they need something else, but like work for a pig. I don't know, but but the idea is that like we have the resources. They're just having kind of like a clog in the system, right? You gotta help clear that out a little bit.
They're just being grossly mismanaged. That's all.
Here's a joke, real dumb joke for the day. What noise does a pig make?
Oink.
Freeze, motherfuckers, and put your motherfucking hands above your heads.
Oh, that is a bad joke.
Yeah,
The pig phrase.
we have the largest and greatest food market on the world, but we have also the worst distribution system in the world.
Hmm.
There's no reason why any individual or family in this country should be made to go hungry. And this debacle was actually made worse when, and this was going back to what you guys mentioned earlier about what you thought Pelosi was going to do with means testing and all that. One of the parts of the first Corona bill that, where some people got a $1,200 check, some people got that on top of $600 a week unemployment benefits, but the poorest who have like no incomes at all and who were on food stamps got boosts in their food stamp benefits. Yet, and this is what I've been working on for the past 2 weeks with the problems of the lockdowns and a lot of stores, practicing social distancing, many of them eliminating in-store shopping altogether. It's like you can do the curbside pickup if you shop online and pay for your order in advance and schedule a pickup, or you can go through Instacart or Fresh Direct or Ship It, just to name a few. Which are affiliated with these different stores, and they will do the grocery delivery. And same deal. You shop online at that particular store, and it's a minimum order of $35, and then Instacart or whatever will deliver it. However, guess what? None of those options allow food stamp recipients to use their EBT cards. You cannot buy your groceries, your food, with your food stamps, using the food stamps as their intended purpose to purchase your groceries through these avenues. And this has wreaked havoc for a lot of shut-ins, especially in the rural areas where there isn't public transport and there isn't any volunteer organization with people who have cars offering, free rides, to the stores for people who cannot get out to them to pick up the food, or, to take a food stamp recipient who's elderly or who's disabled to the store to physically go shopping if that store is allowing in-store shopping. So how much food is being wasted because of stupid shit like that?
I completely agree. But Jacqueline, if we fixed all that, there'd be no thing for the government to be intervening in. There'd be no food stamps program. With all their administration, they'd have delivery people instead and employed with private companies.
Well, yeah, but the government, the intervention measures are a colossal, epic fail. And I got into it with somebody who was actually attacking Scott Santon's and Heidi Brioni's and basically every Yang supporter and all UBI advocates writ large on this really nasty Twitter battle the other day, where this guy was, basically saying, it's cruel to make the poor choose between, their food stamps and their SSI check or a UBI. And Scott tagged me, it's like, okay, I've got an idiot.
Yeah, you were talking about this yesterday, I believe.
Yes, people want things that work. People don't want excuses. People are fed up. People are hungry. People want something that works. What we have is not working. And how much of this food is being dumped and wasted because we've got, at least 38 million people living at or below poverty that are participating or receiving food stamps through the SNAP program. And a significant chunk of them are literally unable to use them. They're unable to buy food. If they don't have any income or if they don't have any money, to spare after keeping a roof over their head to buy food, they literally have no way to buy food. So when Nancy Pelosi puts something or supports something being put into a COVID relief measure that calls for increasing SNAP benefits, it's completely useless. And it's really hard for me to restrain myself when I'm dealing with people that support these programs and say how they're the best thing since toast. It's like I want to tell them, you are a glittering jewel of colossal ignorance.
So can I interject here? So I think for people who have the issues of getting out and about, unfortunately, it's on them to personally reach out to people in their area, whether it be like a Facebook group or an app like Neighborhood or Nextdoor, I think it's called. Like there's ways to connect with your community, and reaching out for even just like, maybe your neighbor or, it's on a personal level, to create these networks and, teaching people how to do it. Say grandma doesn't know how to use the internet, like as grandchildren, maybe we could go check on them and set them up, because the reality is, the government can only do so much, but we have so much more power in our hands. Like, I understand the limitations of distribution, but communication is a learnable skill, and it is something that we can expand upon to create the network that needs to exist in our own communities. You could start your own Facebook group to be like, Wheels for EBT or something. I don't know, but anyone can take the call. Anyone can make the Facebook group. Anyone can do this at this point in time if they have access to internet. If they don't have that, it's a little harder.
That's the key. It's not just access to the internet, because we have a lot of rural areas that don't really even have the infrastructure to have high speed internet. There's parts of Erie County that are still on dial-up, believe it or not. So they can't really use the apps. And then you've got, people in their 80s and 70s and 80s. They don't know how to get online and use the internet. They don't even know how to get on Facebook, And it's a learning curve. It's a very steep learning curve, but it's an entire generation of people that got completely left behind and fell on the losing side of the digital divide. This is like something that's been an ongoing problem, and I don't have all the answers, but it's just that it just seems to me that nobody seems to have any sympathy for the most vulnerable, people in that situation, and it's rather disturbing to me. And that's all I got to say about it.
Yeah, I don't disagree there. But okay, I'll just use my family as an example. So my grandma was fine learning Facebook, but she would always get my brother to help her, right? She would have no problem asking, hey, I broke something, help me, right? My grandpa only got a cell phone like last year. Okay, my grandpa is barely onto this thing, but I helped create a Facebook group where we can all now do video chats every Sunday. And even grandpa is in the video chat, which, it's up to the younger generations to teach the older generations this curve. And also, I think we really, hands down, we need to develop our internet all across the U.S. Like, we should not have any places with dial-up at this point in time.
Faye, what about the people who don't have kids?
They would have to, the older people would have to maybe talk to their friend circles and see if any of their kids might, we have communities. It's not like they don't exist. It's not like they don't have friends or,
Yeah.
I think a lot of it is just not knowing how to ask. or not even thinking to ask.
Yeah,
They don't know what exists.
You'd be surprised how many people really don't have friends because poverty, especially rural poverty, is very isolating. And when you're old and you felt like you've just been discarded your whole life, you really, it's a very daunting prospect to try to reach out. You develop a sense of agoraphobia that's just, you can't imagine. I don't know if that makes sense to you, but...
I mean, I have a friend who has agoraphobia. It takes him a couple days to even go outside, right? He's got to hype himself up. I haven't seen more than a picture of this particular individual, but now we talk pretty regularly. And again, the internet helps with that process, but he's able to live vicariously through it. But I met him through a writer's group on Facebook, and they read some ideas I had, and they wanted to help me out with it. So again, it's back down to the individual person to take that scary leap of faith to even join a group. Maybe they need to start somewhere with I'm part of a group called No, I'm Not Okay on Facebook, and it's where people can just vent and or support each other.
Interesting.
So there's lots of resources that people just don't even consider tapping into. But I mean, I think it's important for people to have 5 core people in their life. So you need your cheerleader, that person that kind of helps, uplift you a little bit, the optimist in your life, a peer. I stole this from someone online. It's 5 key people you need in your life. But a peer, people who work in the same project that you can complain about work to. You need friends, that person that you can talk about personal information, whether it be sexual or whatever, emotional support. And then you have a coach to help push you in your limits. They see your potential, you allow them to expand on that. And then the last one's a mentor, that person who has gone through it and will help guide you through it. I think
I see that working really well for younger people, but I don't see that working very well for a lot of seniors, And when I say seniors, I mean people in their 70s and, and stuff, 60s and 70s. It's just, not a landscape that many seniors find navigable, if I'm making sense.
You're not wrong. They would have to really, the younger generation should be trying to help the older generation, but it's not happening globally, right? But it's a different language to them. They don't resonate, but the younger generation doesn't know how to connect with them either. So it's a huge learning curve for them. I don't think it's impossible since my grandpa at 80 finally figured it out. So it's not impossible, but yes, you're not wrong. There's definitely a lot of people who can't access those kind of things. Sorry, I derailed the conversation from...
No. I mean, I'm glad that you're here and that we're able to have this conversation, because it's, it's a long, unaddressed, overlooked, ignored issue. And, I find most people to, not really be very empathetic. If it's not them, they don't give a shit, and I know it's a real saturnine way to view things, but, a lifetime of getting kicked in the face will definitely turn you into a big time cynic.
Yeah, some people their assholiness level is for asinine 1,000.
Oh yeah, I mean, if there was a contest for assholiness of the year award, they'd have to give out a couple 100 million of those and say you're all tied.
The asshole award.
The other thing, though, about the not being empathetic and stuff, the mental bandwidth we have to do any kind of task is very limited. I mean, we, especially if you're in poverty, right? Because you're doing mental aerobics. If I spend money here, I can't spend money here. And so we're using all this mental bandwidth on where the money can go. And then maybe that leads to you're fighting in your relationship. So that steals more mental bandwidth. And then maybe more stuff happens. And so we have even less time for personal development, let alone connections to other people. If we get lost in this spiral of eliminating bandwidth. And part of the problem is, people don't realize that just cleaning up the mess around you cleans up some of that mental bandwidth, because it's like that little thing nagging at the back of your mind. I got to do dishes. If you do the dishes, you actually get more mental bandwidth done or back because you did it, So it's a matter of just small little steps, but because we're so overwhelmed, especially financially, and why we need UBI, we can become smarter, essentially, if we free up that, and then we can be a little more empathetic, or just find someone who hasn't been overwhelmed with your pain that is willing to listen. Maybe that'd be therapy, and then that would return some of that mental bandwidth as well, because we're always questioning, wondering, and our brains moving a mile a minute instead of checking in on other people. And then maybe you snap at someone, and then now they're like, just saying. I've done a lot of research on neurology, mind you. This is why I'm so obsessive about it.
These are the conversations we should be having in our families, and these are the things that the schools should be kind of helping us with.
There's a lot of older people that don't have any living family members left, and their friends have all either died off or they're in nursing homes, and they're all alone, and it's just
sad.
Yeah, and it's like this isn't an unaddressed an issue that nobody seems to want to look at, And when it comes to the policy-making level, which is one of the reasons why I was hammering so hard on my state reps this past week about UBI, because at least if everybody had a UBI, that would help a lot of these seniors who maybe they just figured out how to use their iPhone and just learn how to use Siri, okay, and get Siri to help them, bring up the Instacart app or the Fresh Direct app or whatever, right, so they could then buy their food.
Yeah.
Gee, what a concept, right?
These elective representatives are such scum that they don't even know themselves, but they have their staff. They have all these people helping them and doing everything for them. And they're getting paid for it. Just so they can do nothing in return for the people who they represent. I mean, it's a miscarriage of justice. It's a travesty.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Everybody sitting in this room, universe forces willing, is going to eventually someday get old, have health problems, and be infirm themselves, and maybe they won't have living family left, and maybe half their friends have already passed on. And you'll be in that situation. And we'd like to fix that so that it's not a problem for you guys.
Mm-hmm.
I'd like to fix that so it's not a problem for any of you guys in this room.
It's nice of you. The thing is that I bet none of these elected representatives could live your life for like a week.
Oh, I know they wouldn't. They'd have blown their fucking brains out.
Yeah,
they'd have blown their brains out while they were arguing over FOSTA SESTA, which was a law that Trump made himself into a superstar over, thinking he was doing trafficking survivors such a huge favor. I was putting my trading skills to use in the practicum on real life street level. I was at the time attending computer programming meetups in Buffalo, which is 90 miles east of me. And I networked there with a lady who had a job at a local college, and they were swapping out all of their fairly recent, they weren't old, outdated computers, and got a shit ton of donated computers and organized a way to get them delivered to other leaders in the survivor community who are working with helping the destitute trafficking victims that are seeking help and refuge, today. And it's like accomplished that, and I'm not trying to brag, because I don't think I'm particularly talented or smart, but I accomplished this in a span of 10 days, and yet months, years down on the road, we still have lawmakers that cannot figure out how to get resources to, people who have been marginalized so badly that nobody else even knows they're out on them, that there's a community like this outside on the margins, And it just makes me laugh, like, okay, this is supposed to be the information age. Why the fuck isn't everybody's brains working absorbing information?
Part of the problem with that, though, is unawareness, not educating yourself, like even evaluating your environment. Like, unless they're experiencing it on a personal level where it humanizes the whole situation, but also having a mentor. Part of it, I think, our country doesn't have good mentors. We don't have people stepping up who like teaching the ways, because I mean, even politics, I mean, the opportunities were around me growing up, but like nobody was a mentor to me about it. And so I didn't even learn the game. And, when I started helping on Andrew Yang's campaign, like it was a crash course into how things work. And then it was a big like slap in the face that it's not working. But I think these people in charge, they just need conversations like this, platforms where they can communicate so that they actually understand the needs of the people. Because if you're far removed from it, it's hard. But they just need to more or less delegate to people who can take care of it, such as yourself. And thank you for the work that you've done. But, I think it's almost instead of blaming, educate,
I try. It's just that oftentimes when I try to do that, I get my voice silenced. It's people don't want to talk about it. It's like
Could you create a template that someone could step into?
We've tried that, and to be honest with you, it's a lot of the survivor leaders in the trafficking survivor community are burned out because we've been communicating and educating for years, only to get not listened to. And it's the same thing with trying to advocate for help for elderly shut-ins right now with this food stamp debacle. I've been tweeting and posting about this, this is something that should have been thought of, a month ago. And it's like, I don't have a platform. So when I post stuff, most of the time, nobody sees it. Nobody pays attention to it. People who are on the internet and who are savvy with social media totally fucking ignore it and don't care. And how can, what can I do about that? Because you can't force people to care, and that's just, I'm at the point where I'm burned out, quite frankly, in a huge
It's
way.
okay to stop, you don't have to do it. It's not necessarily your responsibility. You might feel responsible for it, but it's okay to like walk away. But I mean, if it's that much pain, I don't think you're doing yourself any service. If it's not bringing you joy, you could actually possibly cause more harm than good. Not saying that's what's happening, but in a long run of being burnt out, I mean, that's what's happening with society. So many people are burnt out that all the problems are catching up with us now. And
I guess I wouldn't feel so badly about it if I at least felt heard.
You're not being recognized and appreciated. That's an issue.
No, I mean, being heard by people who can help signal boost this. And, it just takes, 2 minutes to read a fucking tweet? I mean, I promise I won't use big words. I mean, shit. It's like there's been a couple, like one or two members of Yang Gang that I'm friends with that have been signal boosting some of this stuff, but it's like it takes a back seat to whether or not Lady Gaga changed her underwear this week or something stupid like that. I don't know. I don't know how to.
I have some advice that I got from someone who's really good at marketing. If you want to hear some of it, but we can do that elsewhere. It doesn't have to be here.
You can do it here. Go ahead.
Okay. So ways to signal boost any message. So you go to if you find a platform that lets you find local tweets around you, or Instagram. I'm newer to some of these platforms, so bear with me. But you find local, and you comment on something that was just recently posted, and then you also attach a link. So you find something similar, and you leave a 3 or more word comment, and but maybe even attaching a little thing. So you have to go out there and look for people specifically. But if you're finding them, they're more likely to look at what you're sending. Not necessarily, but it might be a little more direct. So if there are people you're trying to reach out to, go specifically to their pages and leave comments, and maybe even hook back to platforms that you do participate in, such as the Roundtable. And then this becomes your platform. Eventually, I mean, if we extrapolate the Roundtable, people might eventually come seeking us, okay, if we become important enough, because this is a platform where the CEO can talk to the janitor, essentially. And so, people are looking for a platform like this. There's not many that I've personally found, but as quarantine continues, more people are turning to chat groups, right? So there is more communication happening. So you just got to find these chat groups. And then maybe you name drop what you're part of. Maybe you get excited and you tell them about these different things that you're working on. And then the other thing is finding people who can help boost your numbers as, they have a large network. I mean, even AI figured out you scratch my back, I'll scratch your back is the most ideal way of going about the world. It ran lots of different tests or whatever, and that was what we need to be doing as a society. It's like skill sharing. And it's just trying to think outside the box. Who might be interested? What chat groups to find? What pages to like and comment on? And what's near you? And can you redirect their focus towards you? Because in today's society, we have information overload. We have choices galore. To pinpoint one specific gets difficult, but there are groups where they choose how to figure out the Twitter hashtag trend. I mean, there are people in the Yang Gang that are really great about that. You find those people, you connect with them, get something that relates to us trending, and you get the message out there. It's all networking. And, the more special guests we get on here as well, we add their networks if they so decide. They don't have to post what they contribute to, but generally people like that. Some ideas, guys.
No, I'm taking notes. I am actually taking
part of the
notes.
idea of this podcast is to share knowledge, and I think you're into that, Faith. I think you get it. So that was great. I hope everyone and anyone listening benefits.
Yeah, that was pretty good. I think we have to concentrate on more of this, especially in the days, weeks, months, maybe year ahead. As this thing continues, people are going to look for online outlets to at least vent, when they're maybe going stir crazy or something like that. And I really think that this as bad as the pandemic we're in, it is an opportunity to bridge these communication gaps directly, and only good can come out of it.
I mean, even going in gaming, you could, if you have a video or a voice chat, just start talking to these networks that you're already part of. It doesn't have to be a new network, but plant the seeds,
See, that video gaming stuff, that's all out of my realm.
That was for the gamers. That was just, I don't play games either. I get it.
There's one game that I really, really, really totally love, and that's Elder Scrolls 4 Oblivion. I mean, I'm just putting that out there. But I'm lost when it comes to all these other things and, like what to follow. And it's just, there's only so much time in a day. And I don't have the physical health and vitality and energy that I had when I was 20, 30, or even 40. So it's like there's so many curious things in the world that I could get lost in research land for months. And if my husband didn't come downstairs and remind me, dear, you need to eat so you can take your insulin, I'd probably be dead. Because I'm that type of person that I'll forget to eat. I'll get into researching something or reading something, and I'm going to be so going balls to the wall in it that I lose time. It just gets away. I don't know how this happens all the time to me, but it does.
It's good. You see, if we got more people like that and actually gave them the resources they need to thrive, our world would be so much better instead of having these corrupt scum suckers, who don't contribute to anything, who are the real leeches. It's like, I bet none of these congressional whatever the hells or lawmakers ever even take the time to do their own research or like they're just lazy. They just they just rely on their staff, and they just go to like cocktail parties. They just like wine and dine and don't contribute to anything.
I don't think, Ariel, I'll be honest with you, I don't think they could research their way out of an outhouse.
Probably not.
I really don't. I'm going to be one of the ones, if we can get this thing off the ground, that will be testifying, for the UBI thing before Congress. And from having had prior experience with testifying before Congress over a decade ago when it came to, help, and reparations for for trafficking survivors who were literally rendered unemployable unjustly for life because of being victims of a particular type of crime. It's like these guys that were these senators that that me and these other survivor leaders were testifying to. I mean, they didn't strike me as having the sum total IQ of a houseplant between the whole batch of them.
Well, I think part of the problem too is they probably get comments like these, and it's probably not as encouraging than if we did words of affirmation, aka "You're doing a great job." Like positive encouragement works well with children and adults in general. I mean, if you're in that position and someone was saying that about you, it might demotivate instead of inspire. Like I was trying to put myself in Trump's shoes. Like if I was in Trump's shoes about this coronavirus and I'm hearing all these mixed messages, man, it would be hard for me to make a decision of what to do. And it would be a lot of pressure, and real lives are at risk. I mean, I wouldn't be spewing, talking about Clorox because, I mean, we have a whole population that doesn't even understand sarcasm. We have a whole population that doesn't understand New Yorker speak. There's a certain kind of flow to it that, if taken very literal, is very dangerous. And I think, as a leader, we need to be able to recognize that kind of thing. But regardless, there's so much conflicting information out there that, I mean, even the leaders are going to be confused and like really pressured to make decisions, which causes kind of a paralysis.
Yeah, and it's when I look to history for how our government handled crises before. We had pandemics before. We had the 1918 flu. We had the bombing of Pearl Harbor. We had the Great Depression and the Dust Bowl phenomenon happening concurrently at the same time. What was different then, other than the fact that they didn't have computers and internet back then? What else was different between then and now?
Well, I think a lot of that is the focus of the younger generation is instantly on the phone and for entertainment, and they're being bombarded with advertisements to distract them, and they're getting little dopamine boosts from distraction. And back in the day, we didn't have as much distraction. It was survival. It was, we have to work together. We have to teach each other. We don't have they didn't have the internet to derail them as much as we do now. The communication was slower, but it still happened to a degree, and the focus was more important there. And this younger generation, we weren't taught. Like, I think, simply put, the education was in the wrong focus, and we also have this bystander effect happening. Well, someone else will take care of it.
That's a really good point, Faye, about the bystander effect.
Mm-hmm.
Well, somebody will take care of those people. Somebody will help them. Except that's not what's happening.
Yeah.
And
I must admit that's terrible. And I always used to think in my head, like, all these ideas that I had, and I said, well, why isn't anyone doing anything about it? That's because everybody else is thinking the same thing. And then I'm like, probably nobody's right. Probably no one's doing anything about it because everybody else is also thinking nobody else is doing anything about it. And here we are. So it's like, then I have to do something because I know where they are in their heads. And they were where I was, where they thought someone else will do it.
Yeah, everyone has got to just try to contribute according to their ability. I thought, I know how to do audio stuff. Maybe I'll do like a podcast. So,
And it's really frustrating for me because I don't even have a vehicle anymore. So it's like I'm having to rely 99% on the internet, on what I can accomplish at home on the internet, as somebody who has no resources really. And that's what's frustrating because it's like, well, gee, if I had, resources to work with, I could just roll up my sleeves and jump on this shit myself. And I'm so frustrated that I'm not able to do that. That is, I don't have any words to describe just how lost and heartbroken and frustrated and angry. And did I mention angry? The whole situation has me.
And that's why when we have that talk about credentialism and gatekeepers, that's why we're putting this bystander position, because that's always what we feel like, when we're growing up. No, you don't know enough. Let your parents take care of it. No, you don't know enough. Let the school take care of it. No, let the fireman take care of it. No, let the policeman take care of it. No, let this other dummy take care of it. It's like, no. And I find it so infuriating that, like, my generation, millennial generation, they're like, oh, well, you're just living at home and you're being supported. It's like, you know what, fuckhead? I got good grades. I did really hard work in school. I applied to a whole bunch of jobs and I did what I was told. And you got not hired.
And you got not hired, which was what happened to me as an Xer, as a Gen Xer, and it's like, it's not because you did anything wrong or didn't do this right or didn't do that right. And the other thing is that only, not all millennials have the privilege of having middle class or, better off parents to live with. There's a lot of millennials that don't have family at all,
Yeah.
There's a lot of them in the trafficking survivor community that the older survivors are trying to help and mentor, when many of us don't even know where our next meal is coming from, literally. And it's and when you talked about the credentialism, I saw that firsthand once people started to recognize that human trafficking, that the survivors, we were legit, that human trafficking really is a thing. It really is something that was done to us against our will, because for many years we weren't believed and we were shamed into having to hide and shamed into silence. Okay. Yeah. And then it's like all of a sudden you have all these privileged people. And when I say privileged, I mean socioeconomically privileged, and they weren't survivors. They weren't trafficking survivors themselves. And they rolled up on in with their we know everything attitude and all these newly minted, made up graduate level degrees. And when I say made up, I mean they were literally just made up. Like, these disciplines did not exist in any college 10 years ago, right?
Yeah.
And now all of a sudden they're coming in and they're shoving the survivor leaders we've been the ones doing the heavy lifting, and we got shoved aside while they get listened to without even really understanding what it means to be, a part of, be a survivor and have those unique sets of needs.
I can't stand
And yet
that.
they come in and they say, well, I have a degree, and they get listened to, they get the funding, they spin up charities, which set up nice revenue streams for them as charity executives, and the survivors themselves are
So backwards. It's so backwards.
Then we're not listened to. It's like they say, well, we don't have degrees, graduate level degrees.
They can shove those degrees up their asses and light them on fire.
And it's like, dude, okay, where did you go to get a PhD in Prostitution 101, Forced Prostitution 101? I want to know what diploma mill you went to,
Right, yeah.
I'm so frustrated.
I cannot stand when other people who don't know shit about me try to be my voice or try to be like my advocate. It's like, no, like, fuck you, scumbag. It's like I can't. It's like, excuse me, let me speak for myself, you asswipe. And if there's going to be any funding, let it go to me. In fact, I think if you gave me all of the property taxes that went to the schooling system that was allocated for like each seat, and you just directly put it in my pocket, I'd just be in a way better position than I am now.
Can I talk on this whole sex for money topic? So I was a professional cuddle buddy for a couple years. That's a real thing. And part of what I recognized while I did it, I had to stop because it's not safe. And one of the biggest appeals to Andrew Yang was the money for everybody, because it seemed like the only solution I could possibly find. Because, I mean, once the Craigslist and Backpage got shut down for finding other people, they merged over to the cuddling site. And so that created this mixed message platform. And, people are going to do whatever they want to do. Like, they might get aroused and they might follow through, right? But it's against the rules, blah, blah, blah. But it's just, the other thing is people are not taught how to set boundaries. People are not taught to recognize manipulation. They're not taught to recognize grooming, for prostitution or any of this. And the other thing is we're not having conversations about what we recognize. Like, the cuddlers that I interviewed, they have, their own perspectives on it, on this situation. But realistically, the sexual harassment and violations is ridiculous. And I had been part of the forums, and I was like, hey, well, here's some information on how to spot when you're being groomed for prostitution, because, that is the thing. But I met a prostitute who had become a cuddler because it was like more relaxing for her to try and switch over. But she had just started, so I don't know how that turned out. But it's
well, it's a real problem, because when I talk about the trafficking survivor community, I'm talking about a community where the survivors, they may have escaped as young adults, but they were definitely coerced or otherwise forced into it as kids, like 12, 13 years old average age. I was 12. Lost my parents, orphaned, homeless, trafficked, And there's this culture that prevails that says that you're not allowed to have access to the language of no, which is very important to be able to have when it comes to setting boundaries. And when you take somebody who's not a physically, much less intellectually and mentally and emotionally fully developed adult, you're taking a 12-year-old or even younger, and violating their boundaries before they even know that they're allowed to have boundaries. And it's just the unpacking of that mess is just phenomenal. And this is
You're not wrong.
Yeah, and what was so overlooked and was that, this is why I was saying, trafficking survivors and sex workers, self-identified sex workers, both. We may not agree. The camps may not agree on much, but there's two things we do agree on. Don't call us prostitutes. And for Christ's sake, if you want to help us, give us money, And it's like what I've seen is this lack of boundaries that was enforced on both communities. It comes from the larger society's sense of entitlement to set aside an entire class of people to be a permanent sexual and economic underclass.
Yeah. There's this whole culture of you don't have the right to say no, but also it's kind of stealthily in there in our school systems and in academia because of quotas. So, the thing is that if, I remember my high school counselor, I didn't even like algebra, and then we had the option of taking geometry. And then I said, well, I really don't see the point in taking geometry. And you know what he said? He goes, if you don't take it, you'll work at McDonald's. And I'm like, wow, holy shit. He's like, I'm sorry to tell you this, but no, it's very important that you take this class. It didn't mean shit. It was I'm like, he's retarded. First of all, what is he? A classist? And at least at McDonald's, I make money. I make no money when I come to school. I mean, I don't know. And then, this whole culture of in the schools, no, just say yes to any job. It doesn't matter what it is. You just need your first job, and always be nice to your employers. And even when the job sucked, they told me to write them a thank you letter just for the, privilege of having a job. They're like, no, but if you're thinking of resigning or going away, write them a letter, explaining that, you're on good terms. So it's this whole culture of when it comes to employers, you are have to say yes, and it's oh my goodness, you should just be happy for any chance you get at doing anything. And this is why so many people get sucked into an online course or an MLM or things like that, because it's this whole subservient culture in our stupid schools and education that tell us to just accept anything, even if it's the lowest paying or they treat you like crap. Just accept it and be happy. You scumbag assholes.
It is a pattern of predatory grooming that matches the pattern of predatory grooming that traffickers use to get victims. It is the same pattern. And when you have a math degree, you're pretty damn good at recognizing patterns, right?
Right.
But
exactly.
Indoctrination is also just a thing, too. You get them young and while their brains are developing. And then you got them because they don't know better. But part of it is you were talking essentially about choice, and if someone offers you all the money in the world but has been skeevy on you and making you feel uncomfortable, that's a choice you can make. You could probably guess the consequences, that you'll probably have to do something sexual at some point if you don't know how to say no. Or constantly feel harassed. And then there's maybe, you say no to that choice, right? And you wait and you wait. People want instant gratification, though, and they don't wait for the choice that needs to come around. But they don't even look for qualities they don't have qualifications that must be met. Yeah.
It's an interesting message that the sometimes the society sends you. It's if these people are your source of funding or your source of getting support, it doesn't matter how much they abuse you. It doesn't matter how much they exploit you or take advantage of you. If money is changing hands and it's coming from one hand into your hand, that person who's putting it to your hands has the right to do whatever the hell they want to you, and you don't have a right to say anything.
Thank you, Ariel. You have perfectly articulated what trafficking survivors have been saying when we were telling our stories over and over again in a society that really believed, that really bought into this lie that, oh, gee, this was something that we chose. Well, when you're 12 years old and you're physically forced by a dangerous group of outlaw bikers, I don't think anybody can question that there was no choice there or any capacity for consent. But, you know, we have a society that's in la-la land that does not understand that words have meaning, and they don't understand this. And you've just articulated perfectly. It's the same predatory pattern. I'm entitled, I have money, there's a power imbalance, and I'm entitled to violate your boundaries and do to you whatever I want because you need this money to feed yourself or to put yourself in a place to live instead of
but you see that even extends into the business world. It's
yes,
the same thing.
Yeah, I mean, and I'm very hypersensitive to it because of what I had experienced as a homeless child who was a trafficking victim. And I pick up on certain things right away, and you know what you guys might call getting triggered. Okay, what you guys call getting triggered, I call my bullshit siren going off.
Yeah.
So a lot of it too, though, is one, our fear responses. Like society has caused us to constantly have adrenaline. That we're numb to actually recognizing when our gut is trying to scream at us. I started doing this exercise to help people understand the feeling of what they call cognitive dissonance. It's essentially two competing belief systems, aka I love him, but he beats me. You know, and the exercise is just a simple set of questions that puts you into answering something that you do and do not want. And you have to pay attention to your body responses. That's the important part. And so the first, do you guys mind if I go through it real quick?
No, please.
So the first set of questions, you don't have to like say it out loud, but think about it and think about how it feels in your body. Like, where do you tense up, or like what feels fluttery, or like did something, whatever. So the first set of questions, you say no to everything. And the second set of questions, you say yes to everything. And no actions are taken for any of these, right? So the first set of questions, you say no to. Can I give you $1 million? And just pay attention to how saying no to that might feel. You know, maybe you feel in your stomach like, oh, I could really use that $1 million. Okay. Can I give you a hug? And so like, you know, maybe you're desiring a hug, but you can't get it, right? But like you might feel that pull for it. What's the third question? Sorry. The last question. Can I stab you? Okay. So this one is a threat to your personal body, right? Like, of course you're going to say no. You don't want that. But so just feel that in your body. Now, the second set of questions, you say yes to everything. Can I give you $1 million? How does that feel? Can I give you a hug?
And then you just have to sit there and wonder what, you know, what really defines a legitimate choice. I mean, if you don't have options, you don't really have a choice. And this is what so many people that have never, ever known anybody in the survivor community, in the trafficking survivor community, or in the self-identified sex worker community. Okay, but they've got these newly minted degrees from some diploma mill out of bumfuck Egypt, and they know it all, right? and they don't know. They don't stop to think. They think, oh well, it was just being addicted to drugs. That's why all these women were lured by Robert Picton to his pig farm to end up stabbed to death and butchered and fed through a wood chipper and fed to his hogs.
Oh my God.
Oh yeah. Or this is how Gary Leon Ridgway, the Green River Killer, who also, you know, preyed on this population. Yeah. This was all the things, and the survivors the survivor community has been saying, well, this is what caused it, this is why, only to not be listened to, not be heard, because these credentialist, non-survivor, self-proclaimed experts,
Selfish assholes.
hogged the mic, shoved us out of the room, and it's like, wait a minute, you know what?
So,
Gum.
Yeah, and it's like, this is why, a lot of stuff gets thwarted, and a lot of good progress doesn't get made.
And here's the thing, this bitch, what's her name? Let me say, Kim Reynolds, I think governor of Iowa. Now they're saying that if they open up and people refuse to go back to their old jobs, they don't have a right to get their unemployment compensation anymore, even though they don't know if it's safe or if they're going to be protected. So this is the same kind of thing where you don't have the right to say no. You can't. So that's not freedom. That's that's basically the Kim Reynolds is a pimp, and that she's making, and the employers can be the Johns.
She is actually worse than and I don't say this lightly, okay? She is worse than any trafficker anybody in the survivor community has ever suffered under or been victimized by. Because what she is doing is deliberately risking the lives of untold numbers of people. And it's not just forcing them to risk their lives. It's their families' lives, their neighbors' lives. We're talking about a highly contagious, deadly, novel illness.
Part of it is like there's boundary pushing that happens when consent is violated. Let's just use the body as an example. Maybe someone puts their hand on your leg and you don't respond, right? Because you're paralyzed. You're like, oh, brain freeze. I don't know what to do. Like, too many options. Do I say no? How do I do that? Blah, blah, blah. And then maybe next they, lean in and touch you somewhere else that you don't consent to. And it keeps moving. But by the time you get further along, there's this thing called sunk cost fallacy, which is prevalent everywhere. But essentially, if I invested this much, I guess more doesn't hurt, even though the outcome is never going to get better. It's just going to keep getting worse. But since you've already invested a little bit, you can't just throw away all that time you invested, right? We're so attached to the time that we spend. We have a lack of attachment from decisions. We have to justify. And that's kind of what happens is you start justifying behaviors that you don't agree with. And maybe, for trafficking, maybe it's a boyfriend who starts saying that, oh, you enjoy sex, you need money, why don't you do this? And maybe, you've had a couple drinks, you're like, yeah, sure. Or maybe you can't afford food and you need to make the decision, should I, use what's between my legs as an ATM so I could put food in my belly, And so these are decisions that are not really choice, but this goes to our whole society, as you guys were saying.
Exactly. And what makes it particularly pernicious in this case with what the governor of Iowa, which Ariel brought up, is doing, is that there's a whole lot of people that aren't even a party to this particular transaction, i.e. the transaction of do I or do I not return to work at the meat plant, okay? There's an entire array of people that will be put at risk, and they're not getting the ability to even be at that transactional table to say yay or nay, that are also being hurt. When I was trafficked, I was being hurt. When, others that I mentored today were being trafficked, they were being hurt. It wasn't them and everybody else in the neighborhood. It was, them. And it was the other victims that were directly, hurt. This is a situation where, because of this being a deadly pandemic, that there's an entire population that's not even directly involved with working in the meat packing industry that is being put at risk because of the actions of this governor abusing her position of privilege and power, because of the power imbalance of, people's need for an income to put food on the table and keep their families housed. And that's what really I have no words.
So how do we get her on the show? No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah, you don't want her on the show with me because I will verbally tear into her so bad.
Yeah.
That
I guess my thought would be I would love to hear her defense about this.
If it were the days of tar and feathering, she'd be like Exhibit A, candidate, public enemy number one. Like, if there was ever a justifiable reason to tar and feather someone, you're looking at her.
Yeah, I'd agree with that, Ariel. I would totally agree with that assessment.
Right, just run her out of town. Just like disgusting, and it's like she's selling out her own women, because women do like the unpaid work, and then if their husbands are the ones that are the breadwinners, they're going to bring this sickness and disease to home. Yeah, to the supporters of the family. I mean, it's just so gross. And this is the state that Andrew Yang had to win, that voted for a piece of crap like her. It's disgusting.
Yeah. It really has to. It really forces us, I think, to sit back and reflect on our society's values as a whole, because it's like the same society that produced every one of us, including Andrew Yang, is a society that is also producing people like Governor Kim Reynolds. And it's like we're outnumbered right now, I think. I mean, Andrew Yang, had an uphill battle because, you've got a nation full of people like this nitwit who think it's perfectly okay to offer up entire groups of people as an acceptable sacrifice to serve as human shields. Okay? Yeah. So that the better off don't have to be experience any inconvenience at all. And it's when I say things like privilege occupies the space where someone else's human rights belong, this is exactly what I'm talking about.
All right. She's a pimp she's a trafficker for the coronavirus. She's the coronavirus's pimp, basically. Right.
Yeah, it's like the virus doesn't need Mother Nature to help it out. We got stupid humans.
Yeah, we got Kim Reynolds. The how much is the coronavirus paying her? like if an anthropomorphic virus has a lobby, she'd probably take the funds.
Oh, I think that's a foregone conclusion.
Right.
So what are the positives, though, of this decision in her mind, do you think? Like, what overcame the whole spread? Like, how do you think she justified it?
She just sees it. The religion of workism is basically what it is, because she thinks that it's like, like, it's no big deal. Like, the curve is probably being flattened by now. It's not as prevalent as it was like a month ago. And, let's just take it easy. And, like she's nonchalantly just thinking that somewhere in that pea brain that she has.
Well, I think it's also been a major drain on the state's budget as well. With so many people, on unemployment. Maybe she's looking at a perspective. It's not a sustainable thing.
Or maybe she's looking at, well, we can't have food shortages because we've got a backlog of lean hogs and stuff that's not making it to the meat processing plant, and we can't have people starve to death. However, the response to that is, how much of those jobs can be automated, like as now as possible, to eliminate that concern, to cut that off at the pass, which would address part of the issue as far as the supply chain for the food, getting the food to the public. But we'd still have to overcome, like what Jeremy was saying and what Ariel was saying, the budget concerns and what Ariel was saying about the workism, the workism. I would call it the Thessalonialism. Those who don't work shall not eat. That's where that whole idea comes from. I don't know. I'm spitballing at this point.
We find ourselves in a gross, state, and it's so. I remember there was also that other there was a Republican congressman, I think also from Iowa, that said but an egg can understand the difference between rape sperm and regular sperm.
Right.
Oh yeah, I think he was from. Yeah, I think he was a guy from Missouri. Who was that?
So we have idiots like this, and even on the Democratic side, there was some congressman that said, I fear that if we put too many people on the island of Guam, it could capsize, but it's an island. We have these stupid, ignorant people. And we put them in charge of billions and billions of dollars. However many of them we have. Go figure.
Yeah, I just want to say for the record, it was Todd Aiken who made that quote.
But I think the one from Iowa said even if it's rape, it's no abortion doesn't matter. And then they think that made Romney lose so much support. I don't know, but
Well, the quote he said is, "If it's legitimate rape, the female body has ways to try to shut the whole thing down."
Right. All right. Yeah. So these are the idiots that were.
I've come to the conclusion that if there are extraterrestrial life forms out there that are traveling around the universe, they would completely bypass Earth and say, "Fuck it, we are not slumming it here. There is no intelligent life down there."
It's like in that Toy Story when Buzz Lightyear comes down and he's like, "There seems to be no signs of intelligent life." It's we never said there seems to be no signs of life, just intelligent life.
It just makes me wonder, how much of the human experience has been completely by accident, because when you see stuff like this and when you hear stuff like what Jeremy mentioned, and how prevalent it is, it's not just a one-off. It's there's an assload of people who believe this stuff or think
assholes.
this way. And it's how did the human species manage to make it this far? It must have been by accident, because I'm at a loss. I'm at a loss, guys.
All right. I guess it's somehow democracy's fault, because when the majority of people are goddamn idiots, you get goddamn idiots in positions of high power. But now we can bypass the morons, hopefully due to technology, and get together ourselves. Like Andrew Yang could just create something outside of politics, and we can all just come together and do that. It doesn't, and yeah.
Andrew Yang did a lot more good and help for this country by accident than almost all of our lawmakers have done on purpose.
Oh yeah, for sure. I think Andrew Yang would have been I think he would have been one of our greatest presidents to ever exist if he got in, just bar none. Just even better than Washington. I don't know.
But what he did, though, was inspire more people to take the lead in their own communities. And when he dropped out, I heard many other people that I knew personally were like, "Nope, I'm going in politics. I need to do this. I must take the torch now because he can't.
Yeah.
Fuck this. I'm going to take it."
I think that might have been a catalyst. I think maybe if he stayed in and actually became president, people would have just rested on their laurels and said "Oh, he's our president. He'll just take care of everything for us, so I can still be lazy and not engaging and just live my boring life." But when he dropped out, people were "Oh no, we gotta do something." So I
They
think that's-
can't be bystanders anymore. They can't.
Right,
It has to
yeah.
change.
Oh, yes, perfect.
All right,
Faye.
speaking of, guys, I'm sorry to cut the conversation off there, but we're over time, and I've got to go
Oh, okay.
get ready for the broiler thing in a couple
Nice.
hours. So I'm gonna have Craig leave here. I'm gonna go start doing a little bit of editing and prepare for the thing I'm doing later. So, but you guys are welcome to hang out and stuff. So it was
Cool.
Cool.
good to see you guys. I will.
Cool,
see
thank you.
soon.
Bye.
Do you guys want to do a quick sign off? Say your names and your Twitter. I'm not gonna say your names in order, as you know the drill. But just starting with you, Ariel, if you would please.
Okay, sure. My name's Ariel. You can find me on Twitter, Ariels_Armada, and I'm also YouTube as Revolutionary Thinking.
Hello, my name is Faye D. My Twitter handle is Tisdoney, Tisdoney.
My name is Jacqueline, and you can find me on Twitter at Jacqueline Homan.
I think Jeremy might have jumped off already, and I am at SHAELRILEY on Twitter. Thank you for joining us, and I hope you will be with us again soon. Be well, be safe, take care of yourselves. Does someone have something they wanted to say before we go?
Oh, just that was a perfect thing that we ended on. Just it stopped the bystander effect. I think if anyone goes home listening to this, they can understand that they don't have to be bystanders. They can
Good
get involved.
takeaway. Thank you, Ariel. All right.
Right.
I think this was the best podcast that I was able to participate in. This is my all-time favorite one. I would like to pin this to my Facebook page, pin it to my Twitter, put links to it on the next Medium article that I write, the next core question I answer. I think this was the best podcast ever.
Well, thank you, Jacqueline.
Awesome.
I'm glad we could facilitate that. So that's high praise. Good. Everybody, good job.
Can we catch the Mike Breuer interview in real time?
Yeah, that'll be live streamed here. Faye's going to be there. Both Faye's are going to be there.
Oh, okay.
So,
I'm gonna have to bounce for a little bit, so I might be a little bit late getting to watch that. But if there's
hang on the Twitch chat. Maybe bring some friends or something. That'd be nice, you know. And later,
It's
if you
recorded, Jacqueline. Don't worry about it.
Okay. I'm going to get going so I can prep. But yeah, feel free to stick around. I will talk to you soon. Bye-bye.
Cool.
Bye.
Bye.